Lamer Gamers. This is Simply Travis and
Rowdy 5000.
And today we're going on a side quest. We're going to do a deep dive.
A really deep dive.
Real deep. Into the controversy surrounding Blizzard, China, and Blitzchung in Hong Kong. We had originally planned on doing a main quest episode, but as with any adventure, sometimes you can find yourself getting way more involved in a side quest, and that's kind of what happened as we started looking into the background behind the Free Hong Kong movement, the recent controversy with Blitzchung, and the history of how we got to the point where China can tell Activision and Blizzard what to do.
Blitzchung, that's kind of a cool name, man.
That is a cool name. Now, let's all get in line. Let's let 100 flowers bloom and start goose-stepping towards the glorious future of this special side quest edition of the Lamer Gamers podcast.
So, cue the music. Or as our glorious Chinese overlords say...
提示音乐
All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get started. So we actually had some changes in our scheduling. Last week, had Rowdy come over, drove all the way across the rivers, and we recorded a main quest episode and a side quest called Diablo the Musical.
It was a pretty good idea. It was our what we thought would be great songs to play while raiding during Diablo.
Absolutely.
And we even went to Reddit, asked people what they thought. It was kind of a reaction podcast as well. I hadn't seen any of them, so Travis read them out to me. I laughed a lot, but something happened.
Some bad things happened with our glorious leaders over at Blizzard Activision. So we're going to go into the controversy that's been going on lately, and it's been all over the news. In fact, part of why we're recording this is because, like, we were trying to find, okay, well, what's the news of the week? What's the fake news, the rumors, and...
We couldn't find anything. Basically, Fortnite, possibly Fortnite Chapter 2, and PlayStation's got some weird controllers. That's it.
Yeah. And Google was saying they invented things they didn't invent.
Yeah, negative latency.
Negative latency. Yes. We'll talk more about that next week whenever we get to it or whenever we do our next main quest. So let's go into the actual stuff that's happening. Now, we're going to go and talk about the event itself, the controversy that's going on around it. Then we're going to kind of go into the history of Blizzard and how we really got to where they're bending the knee.
We're going to find that paper trail.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. And poor Rowdy see me running around the house like a crazy person. I've got a tinfoil hat on, and I'm saying all sorts of crazy conspiracy theories.
It's going to get super nerdy in here.
Yeah. So this is kind of a nerd alert. It's kind of a deep dive. It's kind of both. All right. So let's go ahead, and we're going to look at inventglobal.com. And I'm going to be talking about various articles today because kind of writing this up for myself is tough to do. So I'm going to be sourcing from a lot of articles. And Invent Global is probably, I believe it's the people that found this story first, and then it hit the national, I guess the big gaming sites like Engadget and IGN and all the others, and then it just went everywhere. So this is written by Tom Mathieson, and an unexpected turn of events during the last week of the Hearthstone Grandmasters regular season. After finishing his match, the Hong Kong player in Blitzchung, I guess I should have looked up how to say it, Wai Chung, appeared on the official Taiwanese Hearthstone stream for his post-game interview wearing a gas mask. Now, the significance of the gas mask is there have been, there's a movement going on in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, if you don't know anything about it, is supposedly a part of China according to the Chinese. But I don't know the technical way to say this, the Hong Kongians?
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
People in Hong Kong don't believe that they're owned by China. In fact, America supports the Hong Kong people, and there's actually treaties involved. If China were to ever take over Hong Kong, we would step up and, help them out because their beliefs align more with what we as Americans, our governmental system is, than China does. So, anyway, there's these things going on in the Hong Kong protests where they're wearing gas masks because people are being gassed for having protests.
Well, there's also, it keeps the was it facial recognition?
Bingo.
away
Facial
from.
recognition cameras are all up in China.
Yeah, they're wearing like the goggles, the gas masks, and everything. I mean, it helps for gas, but also you don't want to be seen.
Yeah, so real quick question, have you heard of the social credit system?
No.
Okay, so the big thing in China, and they've been testing the social credit system. That's really where this facial recognition stuff's coming from.
Is this like Facebook likes?
In a way. So the social recognition system was something that China had started probably a year or two ago, to where if you don't meet a certain number in this recognition system, you can't buy train tickets, you can't go on airplanes, you can't access certain services and things like that. It's something they started playing around with a while back.
Okay,
And
so there's actually an episode of, what is it, Black Mirror? I think it's like
Bingo.
that.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it. But I don't know if you've ever seen The Orville. It's like Seth MacFarlane's
Is it
parody.
Redenbacher?
No.
Not the popcorn man. Okay.
Seth MacFarlane's basically parody of Star Trek.
Okay.
And so they go to this planet, and when they go to these planets, they have to. It's like the Prime Directive from Star Trek. They don't interfere.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to this planet where everything works on basically this social whatever system.
Yeah.
So let's say you're out in public and you do something publicly that somebody doesn't like. They walk up to you and they hit the down button on your icon on your shirt. And
Wow.
if you get so many down votes, you have to go for basically training. And it's basically where you pretty much just get a lobotomy.
So this all sounds extremely dystopian and very much fiction,
Because it is.
but it's really turning into a thing that's realistic in places like China. And that's part of them covering their faces, is that they don't want to eventually be in this social credit system. But also, I mean, there's so many cameras, even in Hong Kong. Like, they've actually been toppling the camera systems, if you've been looking into all the news. And it's so they're not on a database somewhere. So, kind of going back to the Blitzchung thing. So, Blitzchung had worn this mask, had it's goggles.
Yeah. Goggles and gas masks.
Gas mask. Okay, and so what happened was that he had shouted, and this is actually after the people that were helping run the Hearthstone tournament, the Hearthstone Grand Masters tournament, had basically told him, okay, now say the 8 words, and we're going to cut after this. And so in Chinese, it translates to more words than what I'm about to say, but Blitzchung shouted in Chinese, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our age." And the guys kind of hid behind their desk after that because they knew what was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, knew some backlash was going to be going on. And so it says in this article by Invin Global, not wanting to be associated with the statement. However, in this article, there was a mistranslation initially. The casters both hid behind their desk. Afterwards, they say something along the lines of, "Okay, that's it, Blitz bro." So once the production team itself realizing what had transpired, the stream quickly cuts to an ad break, Mitsubishi actually, which is kind of funny to me. And then a thread on the Hearthstone subreddit was posted with this clip, but it was taken down. So this has happened, and it's become a big thing because what happened afterwards is, well, Blitzchung had won money. This was a post-interview. He won quite a bit of money. Do you remember how much it was off the top of your head?
It equaled out to around 10,000 USD.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it
I
was.
think it was like 3,000 something.
whatever their
Yeah.
currency was, but yeah.
So after that, Blizzard came back and banned him for a year, and then said that he doesn't get the money. Well, that's a problem. And why is Blizzard doing this? Because as we'll talk about later, especially, Blizzard, if you look at a lot of these gaming events, there's always some sort of political message going on, okay, on all sides of the spectrum. And this is very pointed. It's not very long. It's not in China, but it is from somebody that is from Hong Kong.
To Taiwan.
Yeah, it's there. So
Yeah,
exactly.
They are like China. I don't know if you know, this, censors a lot of stuff from Taiwan and Hong Kong. Like I don't know if you've noticed, but I think it's the Overwatch League. Whenever they talk about the Hong Kong Attitude, which is that team, they just abbreviate it as HKA. They don't say Hong Kong attitude.
And I just realized I'd misstated something earlier. Whenever I was talking about Hong Kong having a treaty with us, it's actually Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
So that was misspoken on my part. I apologize for that. I meant to say Taiwan, and Hong Kong is part of China, where they are being allowed to do more things, and they're aligning with Taiwan on a lot of things.
Gotcha.
So misspoke on that. Sorry about that. Okay, so next, so we're gonna go to the Free Hong Kong movement. Let's kind of break down what is going on in Hong Kong. First of all, the Hong Kong protests are known as the Anti-Extradition Law Amendment Bill. So it's a bunch of demonstrations going on which aim to oppose the introduction of a Fugitive Offenders Amendment Bill proposed by the Hong Kong government. So keep in mind, Hong Kong is kind of allowed to have some more freedoms by China. Mm-hmm. They're very similar to what we'd see in Taiwan. But if enacted, the bill would allow local authorities to detain and extradite criminal fugitives who are wanted in territories which Hong Kong does not currently have extradition agreements, including what I was talking about earlier, Taiwan and mainland China. So they were concerned that the bill would subject Hong Kong residents and visitors to the mainland Chinese jurisdiction, undermining the autonomy of the region and its civil liberties. So kind of going back to the idea that Hong Kong is supposed to be its own separate entity from China in a way where they can do business with the international government. Supposed to be. Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on in Hong Kong. Well, after this whole, just give you an idea of what's going on with Blitzchung, why they're doing a Free Hong Kong movement. The aftermath after Blitzchung did this has been kind of crazy. I mean, the internet has absolutely lost its mind in a good way, I think.
Well, yeah. So a lot of times, like, we have this boycott Blizzard movement, and a lot of times when you see these boycott movements on Twitter, you know, nobody really does anything. It's just somebody that's mad and they just start a hashtag. Well, this time around, like, I've seen a lot of people, you know, actually making sacrifices, like deleting their Blizzard or was it Battle.net accounts. They've stopped playing Hearthstone competitively, stopped playing World of Warcraft, Overwatch, things like that. And I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but when you delete your Battle.net account, you forfeit all the rights to those games. So every game that you've bought, you lose when you delete your account. So people are forfeiting all of the games that they've bought that run for Battle.net.
Wow, and those are like on the PC too, because they rarely sell the physical copies of these games.
No, you never see that anymore.
I mean, on the consoles, it's different.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've actually joined in the party. You know how many times I've talked about playing Diablo and how much I like Diablo.
Yep.
How many hundreds of hours I put into Diablo. I'm done with it for the time being. Actually, I'm probably going to have to be done with it because it doesn't sound, and we'll get to it later, doesn't really sound like Blizzard's going to do much about this. They've done a little bit.
We're still waiting. I mean, they've said a little bit, but not much.
So outside of the Blizzard boycott, we've had Reddit has actually, you know, added gasoline to this fire in this boycott. Absolutely. And we've talked about this a couple times. If you want to get people angry at you, get it done on Reddit.
Yeah.
It will turn on you in a heartbeat. Fun fact, Reddit is partially owned by Tencent, which is owned by China.
That's ridiculous.
And Tencent owns parts of Blizzard, which we'll get into in a minute. So it's been really interesting because Tencent, which Tencent is the company that is Chinese created, that has its tendrils.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about a giant space octopus for this as a company.
I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to make any more jokes.
Yeah, I'm not either. Okay, so they invest. That's a nice way of putting it, into multiple companies. And Reddit's one of their current ones that they've invested in and gotten a stake in the company. So they have some sway in what can be done. Well, that caused some backlash too. Do you remember? Were you kind of paying attention to Reddit whenever Tencent bought into them?
No. I didn't even know that they were owned by Tencent until I saw a lot of posts on Reddit. People posting in random Reddits about, you know, hey, just letting you know.
Yeah.
What is it? Reddit partially owned by Chinese companies, blah, 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 all this stuff. Because, I mean, it was like every subreddit that I subscribed to, like somebody was posting it maybe multiple times.
So what started happening was, whenever it first happened, was people posted the Tiananmen Square picture of the man standing in front of the tanks on all just tons of subreddits, to where they were having to come out and basically delete them and all this other stuff. And there was a big stand right at the beginning whenever Tencent took over. And that's still kind of an underpinning of Reddit right now, is that people are constantly trying to put out things that, if you go onto Chinese like search engines, and Google is part of this, if you type in Tiananmen Square in China on the Google search engine, in the past, Tiananmen Square won't show up, at least what they've done. So there's, which that's a whole nother thing for another day. Probably not on this podcast, actually. But, there's a lot of things where China gets involved with companies, and they will purposely try to hinder freedom of speech, but also historical events that are negative to the Chinese government. And so that's sort of what's happened here in Reddit, knowing these people on Reddit, knowing that China is heavily involved with the website now, are using this as a stage to run protests, essentially, and help out the Free Hong Kong movement. So that's been a massive backlash, and a big part of why you see it so big on Reddit is because it's partially Chinese owned. So all these other people in America who are affected by this, because, I mean, honestly, if you want to get social change at this point in the world, get the gamers involved. That has been one of the biggest things that I've noticed in the last couple of years.
So, because recently there's been a lot going on with censorship in China. Like, you don't have, what is it, you can't find Houston Rockets gear.
Oh, yeah. So that's
a Nike store in China now because of the NBA and all this other. I mean, you've had that South Park episode that came out recently, which was actually animated and written prior to the whole Blizzard thing. But this didn't blow up until Blizzard.
The gamer, yeah, and honestly, it's gotten way bigger, and kind of going over, the stuff with the Houston Rockets. That comes from the one of the general managers of the Rockets posting a Free Hong Kong tweet, like retweeting something. Rockets, who have NBA, has some partial investment from China. I'd have to look exactly into it. I don't know who it's through.
Probably Tencent.
It might be Tencent. Yeah, I don't know which part. And as we'll find out later, there are companies that have way more investments in China than is expected. But they kind of pushed him to make an apology. And it's caused a whole firestorm. So now the Rockets are not, that's kind of what Rowdy was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Fun thing in the backlash of all this. Oh, I forgot to mention Winnie the Pooh.
I love Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh's fun. It was one of my favorite cartoons as a kid. You can't watch Winnie the Pooh. Yeah. I'd love some honey. You can't post Winnie the Pooh in China. You know why that is?
I'm just thinking about that episode of South Park.
So there was a movement online where people were posting. I think it's Baidu is the Chinese like message board that's like the official Chinese one, where people were posting Winnie the Pooh next to pictures of the leader of China, saying that he looks similar to him. That's why Winnie the Pooh is not allowed in China.
There was a
simple as that.
There was a game made by Taiwanese developers where they put, or some kind of horror game where they actually put a meme in the game about Winnie the Pooh, and the game got banned in China and then was eventually taken down from Steam. It was edited and then put back on.
And think about the difference in the approaches here from China to our nation. For the last nearly every president, there's always been political cartoons. There's always been revisionings of the presidents. But the state can't do anything about it because we have freedom of speech. So major difference from just somebody saying he might look like a cartoon. And they get rid of the whole freaking thing. That's insane. So South Park did that episode. It was pretty messed up. It was a good episode.
Integrity.
We have integrity. And they actually go after Marvel. They go after Disney.
Disney as a whole. And dude, seeing Mickey Mouse curse out Thor, dude, I laughed so hard.
What are you doing? Yeah. Oh boy. So it's an interesting episode. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's definitely, as my wife was saying, it's not one of the more crass episodes of South Park.
Yeah.
It is definitely one I would see as, I mean, it's like a political cartoon, literally.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to some other aftermath. Next thing is there's now an Overwatch character, which y'all know Overwatch is owned by Blizzard Activision, that is now becoming the official, unofficial Free Hong Kong icon, May.
Yeah, I've seen this pop up. It's pretty smart to do this, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And there's all sorts of versions of this online. There's people going all over Reddit posting them. Twitter is all up about it. So that's a really kind of fun thing. And then there's one that I think is actually one of the bigger pieces that I don't see a lot of people talking about. There's a person called Mark Kern. He was actually basically the person that helped get together the the classic WoW that they just released,
Yeah.
World of Warcraft. And he just released this statement. And his thing is @Grums on Twitter. This hurts, but until Blizzard reverses their decision on Blitzchung, I'm giving up playing classic WoW, which I helped make and helped convince Blizzard to relaunch. There will be no Mark of Kern Guild after all. Let me explain why I am #boycott Blizzard. And so I'm going to read y'all some of his statement, and we'll kind of talk about some of these things. It is a bit of a long statement on here, and I might stop on some of this. But he states that he is ethnically Chinese. He was born in Taiwan and lived in Hong Kong for a time. And once again, kind of going back to that Taiwan-Hong Kong connection. I've done business with China for many years with several gaming companies there. So I think I have a valid perspective here, having been a team lead at Blizzard and having grown up in Asia. I've watched China slowly take over as the dominant investing force in gaming and movies over the years, which we'll talk a lot more about in a bit. It's a shame U.S. companies never believed as strongly as China and Asia investing in games, but this allowed China to have unprecedented influence over our media. So just kind of going out to this. Video games are where media is nowadays.
Yeah.
How many people go to a movie whenever it releases?
Yeah, I mean, only if it's a popular movie.
And they got to pay a lot of money for it, right? Whereas video games, you can be one guy working on a video game and sell to millions of people.
Yeah.
It is where art is nowadays. And it's far more dominant in the media structure than a lot of movies are nowadays. So, all right, back to his statement. China game companies have grown huge not just because of market size, but because the government subsidizes them.
That's lots of money.
That's a lot of money. So they get free land, free offices, and huge infusions of cash. This cash was and is used to expand, and buy up stakes in U.S. gaming companies. He also puts a link there to what he means by that. I've seen firsthand the corruption of Chinese gaming companies, and I was removed from a company I founded after Blizzard for refusing to take a $2 million kickback bribe to take an investment from China. This is the first time I've ever spoken publicly about it. I've also seen how American company reps in China have been offered similar bribes to get licenses for large AAA titles. Not everyone refused like I did. Chinese companies tried to ruin my career with planted press stories. And the press, just going to an aside, there are a lot of journalist groups that have money from China. I read the news a lot, and I've seen some very glowing reviews on Chinese, like Ma, who's the founder of, I think, Alibaba.
Okay.
So, sometimes you see these kind of propaganda-esque stories in press. Anyway, money is often paid for favorable press in China, and some of that money flows here to the U.S. as well. Unfortunately, money talks. China has succeeded in infiltrating all levels of tech, gaming, and more. So, going into Tencent, at this point, Rowdy was a second ago like, I think Tencent might own them.
I mean,
They're everywhere.
It was a joke, but it might be true.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, you don't really know, and that's what I'm finding out. Unfortunately, U.S. and European companies are loath to take risk and invest in game companies legally as much as China was. China remained one of the few places mid-tier studios could get funding. So again, China influence grew. I'm sure this is the same for movies as well. So, I know this is kind of long, but I'm going to go ahead and finish it. It's almost through. But now we are in a situation where unlimited communist money dictates our American values. We censor our games for China. We censor our movies for China. And that was part of the South Park episode too, wasn't it? That was they had said in the South Park episode that the MPAA is now officially China in a way, or unofficially.
There are a lot of movie companies that literally make movies for Chinese audiences because of how much money it makes.
Absolutely.
What is it? The Aquaman movie was huge in China. The Transformer movies made more than double the amount of money in China than it did in the whole wide world combined.
Think of the Warcraft movie.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
The Warcraft movie was released in America first, but it made it big in China.
Yep.
And who owns the Warcraft series? Blizzard. All right. So now game companies, going back to the article, sorry. Now game companies are silencing voices for freedom and democracy. China is dictating that the world be authoritarian. Of all the companies in the world, Blizzard is the last company I have ever expected to give into China's demand. Blizzard was always about gamer first and don't be greedy. At least it was when I was there. It's one thing to keep politics out of games, which I'm still a proponent of doing. It's another to unfairly and harshly punish voices that speak out against corruption, against abuses of human rights and freedom. I take a huge risk by saying this. China monitors all social media, and I know this means that we will probably never get an investment from China for my new MMO, and probably never get a license to operate there. But enough is enough. I stand with Hong Kong, and I oppose Blizzard's obvious and laughably transparent fear of China. It's time for Blizzard to grow the spine it used to have and to do what's right for gamers once again. Gamers rise up. And yes, this means I'll be refusing any deal for Epic exclusivity. The money comes from Tencent. EM8ER, which is the guy's company, will never be an Epic Game Store exclusive. I guess that's the new game. Ember, it looks like is what it would be.
Oh, I was reading that as M8er.
M8er?
Yeah.
Sounds like a tomato. Like a bad...
Sounds like somebody...
I grow them M8ers.
Yeah?
Yeah. All right. This might mean we never make a dime, but more is at stake now than just games. A line has to be drawn, and I'm drawing it now. That's a pretty hard-hitting statement from a guy that worked from Blizzard.
I would say mic drop, but don't drop your mic. Those things are expensive.
Yeah, dude, I'm not... Where's my snowball mic? I'm not using it anymore. I'll go drop that. No, and I'd sent that to Rowdy the other day, and he was like, "Man, that's a good article."
Dude, I mean, those are strong words, man. Like he really is taking a risk here. Like he will never make a dime in China now.
Absolutely. And I texted Rowdy before he got here. It's like, you ready to be banned from China forever?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, we already were whenever we did free Hong Kong as they probably would have banned me long ago. Okay, so all right, guys. So now that we've gone over all of this, so this is the kind of older news. Well, breaking news. We're going to go into some of the things after the aftermath. So Blizzard's had some statements. There's some statements. I couldn't find the Chinese one anymore. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So do you want to read any of that?
Yeah, man. I've been talking. What is it? Was it Blizzard president? What is it? J. Allen Brack. So this is his words, not mine. We have core values that apply here. Think globally, lead responsibly, and importantly, every voice matters. Encouraging everybody to share their point of view. The actions that we took over the weekend are causing people to question if we are still committed to these values, he writes. Okay. Earlier in the week, Blizzard employees apparently covered up these values at the giant orc statue in the Irvine campus as part of their protest.
So you were telling me about that. I didn't even know that.
I've seen pictures of it. And like the Blizzard employees literally walked out when they came back to work on Monday to cover up those values because they're all around the orc. Like it's on the ground printed in stone. So yeah, they went out and they covered them up because, I mean, obviously they're trying to silence people for speaking their mind.
And that's the thing that kills me with this statement. Think globally, lead responsibly. Every voice matters, does it now?
Well, apparently not.
Apparently not people in Hong Kong.
Everybody but Blitzchung.
Yes. And they actually, I'll go to this next article. Blitzchung released a statement.
His was very civil.
His was. I'll let you,
Actually.
if you want to do this one too, go for it.
We'll read some of it. Let's see here. Is just that top part his?
I think this is his actual post.
Okay, yeah. So
on
it's this is kind of a
Reddit.
long one. Let's see here. Thank you for the attention in the past 1 week. Okay, this is obviously translated.
Yeah.
In the past
This
1 week.
is from yesterday that it was posted on Reddit that I'm seeing it.
Gotcha.
So a lot of this is fairly breaking news.
Let's see here. So this is a personal statement and my view on Blizzard's latest decision. First of all, I am grateful for Blizzard reconsidering their position about my ban. I would too if they were giving me back $10,000.
Yeah, they give me some money.
Earlier this week, I told media that I knew I might have penalty or consequence for my act because I understand that my act could take the conversation away from the purpose of the event. In the future, I will be more careful on that and express my opinions or show my support to Hong Kong on my personal platforms. So, I mean, that's the first part of it. To me, I think that's very civil because I don't think I could be that nice.
No, and I'm the same way, and it sounds a little forced to me.
Well,
I'm just saying.
So let's see here. Let's get to the next part. Many people have been asking me if I accept the latest decision of Blizzard. I will discuss that in 2 parts, tournament prize winning and suspension. For tournament prizing, I quoted what Blizzard said on the official website. They mentioned that I played fair in the tournament and they believe I should receive my prizing.
Ching.
This is the part I really appreciate. Blizzard also said they understand for some, this is not about the prize, but perhaps the others, it is disrespectful to even discuss it. People from Blizzard had explained this to me through a phone call, and I really appreciate that, and I accept their decision on this part. Crazy.
Yeah, and you know that if you look at it on that scale, it does make sense. See, they should never have taken the money in the first place. That was a way overreaction, and that's terrible.
Oh yeah.
They shouldn't have, and they probably would not have received as big of a blizzard over this.
But
Okay. If they wouldn't have done that part of it in the first place.
Well, I've seen one of my favorite channels to watch for gaming news is called Inside Gaming. They're a Rooster Teeth company. They're based out of Austin and LA. And they were talking about how what could have made it less of a backlash, because you have to look at like all these big companies that are taking, big steps on some people and not as much on others. Like you look at a lot of the Twitch people who are just getting little slaps on the hand for things that they do. So on Inside Gaming, they were talking about how, let's say Blizzard was like, hey, that's not right. We're going to ban you from, X amount of games and pay a 5% fine out of your prize money. Don't think it would have been blown out of proportion like this. Yeah. But they just straight up did a blitzkrieg and he was banned for a year, took his money, and then the 2 commentators got fired, not suspended, fired.
Yeah. Oh, well, they did change that.
Well, yeah. Now they just have a 6-month suspension like Blitzchung.
Yeah.
But still, man.
There was an article that showed the exact rule, and I'll probably find it here in just a minute.
Dude, that rule is so ridiculously worded. Yeah. I mean, basically, it's worded in the way that Blizzard can literally say, I gotta stop saying literally. Where Blizzard can say, we don't agree with this, no matter what it is. It's dumb, man. I hate it.
So I might let you read the next part of that article while I find that real quick.
Okay, yeah. For the second part about the suspension, Blizzard has changed their suspension on me from a year to 6 months. Once again, I appreciate for their reconsideration on this. God, that was a bad translation. To be honest, I think 6 months is still quite a lot to me, but I also being told that I can continue to compete in Hearthstone Pro Circuit, which they mean the Grandmaster tournament. I appreciate for this decision they made because Grandmaster is currently the highest level tournament in competitive Hearthstone. However, I wish Blizzard can reconsider about their penalty on the 2 casters involved, which they did? No. Maybe he's talking about reinstate them, not have the 6-month ban.
Yeah.
Let's see. Lastly,
I found it, by the way.
many people want to know if I would be competing in Hearthstone in the future. Honestly, I have no idea on that yet, since my next tournament is very likely to be the Grandmaster tournament of next season. It's possibly at least a few months from now on. I will take this time to relax myself to decide if I am staying in competitive Hearthstone scene or not. Hearthstone changed the way I oh my god.
Yeah, no.
Hearthstone changed the way I live. I really love this community. Blessing to all the players out there and blessing to Blizzard. So, dude, that was very nice, man.
Very nicely worded, and that is translated. So if y'all hear anything like weird, it's just because it is translated.
It's not just me speaking Southern.
Yeah, hey, I've been talking them dar things. Okay, so let's kind of go into what rule they broke.
Oh, this is so dumb. I hate it.
Here are 2019 Hearthstone Grandmasters official competition rules version 1.4. This is from page 12, section 6.1.
Oh my god.
Parentheses O. Engaging in any act that in Blizzard's sole discretion brings you into public disrepute, offends a portion or group of the public, or otherwise damages Blizzard's image, will result in removal from Grandmasters and the reduction of the player's prize total to $0 in addition to the other remedies which may be provided for under the handbook and Blizzard's website terms. So you can do anything, basically, that they don't like. If it offends somebody, and I'm sorry, somebody's going to be offended for nearly everything you say.
But even if nobody in the public is offended, but somebody at Blizzard is,
absolutely,
they can still bring down the hammer.
You can't stand for anything, or they can do something.
The glorious communist hammer.
Glorious hammer. And sickle. Don't forget that one. That's coming afterwards.
That cuts people.
Yes, that'll cut you.
I cut you, man.
So, and that's pretty much what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and talk about how did we get to the point where China can tell Activision Blizzard what to do? Because that decision is not made in a vacuum there.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
So I also want to bring up, shortly after Blizzard removed Blitzchung from the Hearthstone Grandmasters for calling for Hong Kong's liberation, the American University College team held up a banner that read, "Free Hong Kong, boycott Blizz." During a match, not only were they offered another match, there were apparently no consequences at all.
So just want to say, good job, everybody that is pressuring Blizzard. Because they still operate here in America.
Oh, yeah.
In America.
And
Okay.
these guys, it was crazy because I've actually read more into this, and these guys say they're done with Hearthstone. Mm-hmm. They're not competing anymore. They actually did this to try and get banned, but they didn't get banned.
Well, because right now, I mean, Blizzard's in damage control. Because they do have to answer to their communist overlords.
Yep.
But they still have to answer to the people that in the cities they live in. They have to pay their workers. They have to own up to them. And as you can see, as we were talking about the campus that was covering up tenets of their beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
These people are also having some boycotts of their own. So there's more to the story than all of this. And it's not just related in China. It's rippled throughout the fabric of American social media and society.
So actually, one bad part about that, though, is that on social media, some people get a little too ridiculous.
Oh, absolutely.
There have actually been threats against Blizzard's campus, threats against Blizzard employees who had nothing to do with this decision.
I can believe that.
Could you imagine just you're, a developer, you're a tester or something at Blizzard, and then now your social media is getting taken over and you're getting threatened because you work for a company?
And that's a terrible thing, too.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, some people do, and that is a thing. And we've talked about this kind of idea where people go too far.
Stop it.
Stop it, bad people. Okay? You have different avenues that you can work against these kind of things, and that is violence is not one of the ways in our society. So this kind of thing, what everybody's doing with these campaigns on Reddit is working, on Twitter. There's not, other than I guess you could reach out to your congressman if you're in those areas that Activision Blizzard's in, like in Austin and California, and say that you would want to see less investments from foreign governments or even Chinese governments into places that are owned by, people in those regions. So
there are congressmen that have gone on Twitter talking about this from both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely. And there are some that are right now going to Hong Kong, which is honestly kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
So, I saw one the other day was taking pictures from Hong Kong. I'm not going to go into who it is specifically. But, it's a surprisingly, on both sides of the aisle right now in America, this is a very, I guess, non-partisan view on this.
It's uniting people, man.
Yeah,
And that
it's great.
doesn't happen.
Absolutely. and it is great to see because there's been so much
Dissonance.
yeah, absolutely. Especially regarding free speech. All right, so ready to move on?
Oh, man, guys, get ready.
Okay. All right, guys. So what's up next is we're going to talk about how we got to the point where China can tell Activision Blizzard what to do. Today, we're going to break down the history of Blizzard to show how a small company with good intentions can lose its soul in the process of making it big on the world stage. All right, so first thing up, we are going to talk about who in the world is Blizzard. So Blizzard didn't start out with that name. It was a company that started in 1991 as the company Silicon and Synapse by Alan Adam, Frank Pierce, and Mike Morhaime to produce the company's first game, RPM Racing.
That sounds like it was amazing.
It does.
I bet it was awful.
But it only took them it probably was. It only took them 2 years until they were given the title Software Developer of the Year by releasing the games such as The Lost Vikings and Rock and Roll Racing.
Dude, Rock and Roll Racing is one of my favorite games.
It's a good one, man.
Ever. Like, I played it on the Super Nintendo. It was awesome.
And, we're both fans of rock and roll, so, yeah, it kind of makes sense. All right, so they actually stopped going by that name in 1993 and changed their name to Chaos Studios. And get this, they sent out 11 projects that year and moved into 4 offices. They had an entire staff of 15 people.
Dude.
They released 11 freaking things in a year with 15 people.
Now, is that like games themselves or just like other projects and stuff?
I'm assuming it's a mixture of both.
Okay. Basically just like a media company.
Yeah,
okay.
But even then, they have how many hundreds or probably thousands of people working for them.
Well, now, yeah.
And they can't even release a game for next year.
Don't you guys have phones?
Don't you guys have mobile phones? Yeah. That was terrible. We were going to talk about that today, but there's too much. We might do that on another one in the future. All right, so next up, well, in 1994, they were bought by Davidson and Associates. They acquired them. So you're going to see lots of acquisitions, and they are at this point no longer the small company. They changed the name of the company from Chaos to Blizzard. So at this point, they are now officially Blizzard in 1994. They've changed their name 3 times.
Christ.
Okay.
Since 91?
Since 91.
3 times in 3 years?
2 times, yeah.
2 times. Okay.
Yeah. All right, so who the heck is this company? Well, Davidson Associates, according to the Wikipedias, was an American developer of educational software based in Torrance, California. The company was founded in 1984, and they specialized in the production of edutainment software.
Ugh.
So later on, they were acquired by somebody else. But they own several studios, including Funny Bone Interactive, Learning Ways, Capital Multimedia, and, of course, Blizzard. They are responsible, get this, for Math Blaster.
Ugh.
You remember Math Blaster? Like in class in the 90s? And you play Math Blasters in the computer lab, and you get to go to the computer lab, and it was super exciting because you weren't in class?
I remember Number Munchers.
It's the same basic idea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the same basic thing. Sorry, I was excited about that. It's like, oh, I did not realize.
I still can't type.
And they made a bunch of, I'm sure, terrible freaking games that were licensed by Fisher-Price.
Oh.
Yeah, like probably Barbie's horse adventures on My Little Pony. I don't know what Fisher-Price does. Anyway, so later on, so going back into the history, they released Warcraft: Orcs and Humans. It was their first official game released under Blizzard Entertainment. So they also released Blackthorn. Now you were really excited about Blackthorn.
Yeah, man.
What was Blackthorn? Because I don't think I played it.
Blackthorn, it was... I don't know what all systems it was on. I know it was on Super Nintendo.
It's probably on PC first, because they were mostly PC.
So, this is also at the time when you had Sega and Super Nintendo releasing a lot of the same stuff. Mm-hmm. But as you remember, Sega games and Super Nintendo games were always, or a lot of times, different. Like, even though it was the same title.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You had a whole different team. Yeah.
So, I know it was on Super Nintendo, but it was basically one of those... It controlled kind of like Prince of Persia. You move like left to right, and you could like jump up and climb stuff. But you played as like this big biker dude with like long hair and a leather vest.
That's what I saw on the cover.
You had a shotgun.
Shotguns.
I never really understood too much about it, but you just walk around and you shoot stuff.
With shotguns?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. By the way, almost all of this information is from Blizzard's official timeline. We're going to get into what's on their timeline and what's not on their timeline as we go through this. And I pull articles from things just to give you some perspective. All right, next up, within a year, so still 1990, or within, I think 1994, going to 1995, they moved from a 3,600 square foot office in Costa Mesa to a 14,000 square foot office in Irvine, California. Blizzard finally launches a website on this fancy thing called the internet.
Dude,
in 1995.
I bet that website was awesome.
Well, it's actually going to be one of the biggest websites that are still kind of used. Remember Battle.net?
Well, it's still Battle.net's still going.
Yeah. We're going to talk about Battle.net as we go through.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah, because that's something they release. Anyway, so Warcraft 2 launches 1995. Big success. Well, what happens next is, amidst all this success, Davidson Associates becomes acquired by CUC International. Well, what in the world is CUC?
I have no idea. Why don't you tell me?
I will tell you. CompuCard. It was a membership-based consumer services conglomerate with travel, shopping, auto, dining, home improvement, and financial services offered to more than 60 million customers worldwide, based out of Stamford, Connecticut. So they're just like a big pile of money that owns a bunch of companies that now
nothing to do with gaming, but
has acquired Davidson Associates, which is Davidson Associates was basically a software company.
Okay,
focused more on edutainment.
Ugh, I hate
but
that word.
At this point, we are no longer involved with a gaming company. So as I kind of talk about, we're going to lose our soul. And as the first thing, as they start losing their soul, what do they release?
Diablo.
It released, and it's the #1 selling PC title alongside Battle.net. Now, I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to take off my tinfoil hat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not going to go anywhere with that. Okay, so, tinfoil? Yeah, tinfoil. All right. Battle.net is released. Didn't realize it was that old either. Okay, it's probably older than some people that are listening to this podcast, because we're looking at 1995-ish.
Yep.
Well, doesn't take long before another merger. A merger happens this time, not an acquisition.
Oh, snap.
Acquisitions are whenever one eats the other and makes it become part of it.
This is one where they hold hands.
Yeah, they hold hands and they skip and frolic. That's the business way of explaining it, right? CUC International and HFS Incorporated joined together to form Cendant in 1997.
What's HFS?
All right, so
I'm
HFS
lost.
was among the fastest growing companies of its size in the 1990s. Basically, they were into the casino industry. Oh, man, that makes a lot of sense now that I'm thinking about it with Diablo.
Oh, man.
Because I've always talked about how Diablo 3 is a lot like a casino, and they get that addiction built into the game with all the things you get.
Dopamine!
Oh! Okay, so So Sendent purchased Sierra Online and Davidson Associates for $2.2 billion. They also acquired Avis Rent-A-Car.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can just drive around, you know? So it was a $14 billion merger of HFS and CUC, and it resulted in the formation of Sendent. Now, we're going to get back to this in just a minute, because this, on the timeline after Sendent, there's some missing stuff here, and I'll explain in a minute. So, after the Sendent merger, the start of 1998, Battle.net, so from 1995 to 1998, has already amassed 1.5 million users on this fancy newfangled internet thing, and then StarCraft shows up.
Dude, StarCraft was awesome.
And Diablo goes to PS1, too.
Dude.
StarCraft was cool. It sold 3 million copies in 3 months.
Dude, but 1.5 million users in 1998?
Well, I mean, before 1998's over, it turned to 4 million users after StarCraft showed up. So, that's a lot.
Yeah, dude.
That's 4 million unique users. At the time of the internet, whenever you had dial-up, that.
Dude, I've played multiplayer games on dial-up. I used to play Command & Conquer Red Alert 2.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember going over to your house playing that.
Oh, my God, man.
Those are the good old days. That weren't that great. I mean, dial-up was terrible.
Awful.
Okay, so let's see. Do you know that a copy of StarCraft was actually taken into space on the Shuttle Discovery during the first docking mission for the International Space Station?
Damn Terrans, space littering.
So now they're all up in the International Space Station. Yeah. All right, so 1991 happens. 1991? I don't know why I put 1991. The company moves to a 50,000 square foot office. I don't think that's right. I think I meant to put 1999. Okay, all right, they moved to a bigger office, so it's 50,000 square feet. Diablo 2 releases in 2000 and sells 1 million copies in 3 weeks, making the fastest selling computer game in history.
Dude, that's so much considering, like, everybody still thinks that any system out there is called a Nintendo.
And at that time, I mean, early 2000, you still had, like, look at them nerds, they're playing video games.
Oh, yeah.
Especially PC gamers were, like, hardcore nerds.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they were like any bad stereotype you can think of a gamer probably comes from what people made up about PC gamers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because Super Nintendo and all that stuff at that time were considered like cool and rad, and they started doing all these different things, and it was awesome. There were skateboards and all this sort of stuff in the background, super colorful.
You should play the voice of Sonic in a cartoon like that.
I should. Put me in the next Sonic. Yeah, I'll be awesome.
Chili dogs, man.
Chili dogs. Uh-oh, acquisition time.
Again.
Vivendi Universals acquires Universal Studios, and Blizzard becomes... Hold up. Back up a second. Where the heck did Sendent go?
I don't know, man. I'm so lost right now.
They didn't mention a single thing about Vivendi Universal. We got to go back.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. We're going back in time. Okay. So, they leave this off of the freaking timeline. Okay, and this is all about them losing their soul, right? You know, as they go through.
Travis, why would they leave this off their timeline?
Well, just after the merger in April 1998, Sendent uncovered a massive accounting error, improprieties at CUC, which was... Who was CUC? Well, that was
something.
Well, those were basically the people that were doing the edutainment stuff.
That's right.
Okay.
I hate that word.
Oh, wait, no, Davidson was. Then CUC
Yes.
bought him. Okay, so CUC, which resulted in one of the largest financial scandals of the 90s. At the 90s, I wasn't paying attention because I was a little kid.
Yeah.
At the time, Vice Chairman E. Kirk Shelton was reported to have inflated the company's revenue by $500 million.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Over a period of 3 years. He had reported in 1997 a net income of $55.4 million, when the true result was a net loss of $217.2 million. There's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, you could say that.
It's like telling somebody you just made $54 whenever in reality you just
owe.
lost $217.
Yeah.
Okay. But just make that millions. Okay. As these irregularities in the books of Sendent were discovered in early 1998, an audit committee set up by Sendent's board of directors launched an investigation, and they discovered that the former management team of CUC had been fraudulently preparing false business statements for several years. So this is actually, they merged with another company trying to say, we make all this money. We'd be a great partner. Lies.
All of it.
All of it was lies. So, following the fraud debacle, the entire interactive software branch was sold for $1 billion to French publisher Havas in 1998. The same year, Havas was purchased by Vivendi. You don't see that anywhere on their timeline.
Okay.
At all. They don't mention Havas. They don't mention being owned by the French. They don't. Which we will have hopefully a translation for something in a little bit. And it's just crazy. Why would you leave this off? I mean, I guess they don't want to be seen as controversial. Oh no, right? All right, so let's go ahead and talk about who the heck is Vivendi Universal. This is where I think you see a large portion of their soul going away and scattered into the ethos. Can we borrow your wife for a second?
Yeah.
So we have with us someone who can translate the name of this company. So we're going to talk about who is Vivendi Universal, and they actually were made in 1853, and they were a water company made. Can you please tell us what this water company's name is?
Compagnie Générale des Eaux.
Thank you. Was created.
Des Eaux.
Des Eaux?
General Company of Water.
Yeah, that's what it means. Good job.
All right.
Thank you. All right. So, in 1854, CGE, that's all I'm going to call it because I can't do all those fancy French words, obtained a concession in order to supply water to the public in Lyon, serving in the capacity for over 100 years. This was made from an imperial decree by Napoleon III, which to me is really funny that all these RTS games are kind of made by a company that involves Napoleon III.
Oh,
That's
man.
just great in my head. Like there's some sort of connections there. All right. Let's go ahead and fast forward to 1983. We're going to skip over 100 years. And it starts to make more sense why the heck a water company bought Blizzard. Not because blizzards involve ice and that involves water technically on a scientific level. Has nothing to do with that. Bad jokes. All right. So, in 1983, CGE helped found Canal Plus, which is really funny because they're a water company. The first pay TV channel in France. And in the 1990s, they began expanding into the telecommunications and mass media. So, they had started in the 90s to go into that. So, they would eventually move into the media sector, which would culminate in the 2000 demerger. So they split into Vivendi Universal and Vivendi Environment. Viola. Have you ever heard of Viola Water?
Nope.
Veolia? Yeah. Well, that's where they're from. So here goes. We're going to kind of jump into 2004. Vivendi was eventually sold to GE to form NBC Universal. Did you know that?
No.
Okay. So also, its current existence follows the 80% stake sale to General Electric. That's just, to me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, because you're thinking about poor Blizzards being thrown from America all the way to France, all the way around the world, back to GE, into making this worldwide multinational corporation.
That's so crazy, man.
I blame Napoleon.
Yeah.
On December 2007, Vivendi announced that it would be merging its game publishing unit with Activision in an $18.8 billion deal. This would allow, so now we're Activision Blizzard, right? This would allow the merged company Activision Blizzard to rival everybody's favorite company in the world, Electronic Arts. That's a lie. To be the world's biggest video games publisher. That's insane. Vivendi held a 52% majority stake in the new business. So they were in charge.
Yeah.
So you got to think this is like a GE, NBC Universal. This is just kind of crazy. September 2009, they go into all these other things. They own companies in Brazil. They're telecommunications. So that was before GE bought them whenever they're in Brazil. GE announces that it's going to purchase them in 2009 and become the biggest stake in NBC Universal. They're even involved with Vodafone, which is a massive, I think, isn't that Mexico and Central America, Vodafone?
Sure.
So, just kind of going into like, where did Blizzard's soul go? Well,
Dude,
it
I'm
was
so
sold all
lost.
over.
I'm so lost.
See what happened to my brain today
Yes.
whenever y'all came in and I was talking like a crazy person.
Yeah.
So at this point, we have this massive merger. Blizzard's owned by a company that is spread all over the world. There's no real direction other than the fact that they want to make money.
Yeah.
Okay? All over the world. There's no, like, country that they really claim anymore. They're a multinational corporation. All right, so here comes China. All right. On July 25th, 2013,
In the future.
Vivendi asset Activision Blizzard announced the purchase of 429 million shares from Vivendi for $5.83 million, dropping the shareholder from a 63% stake to 11.8%. By the end of the deal in September, ending Vivendi's majority ownership of Activision Blizzard. So there's still ownership, right?
Okay.
A little bit. Poquito. Okay. Where Vivendi has a little bit of stake in this. But so what? Hold on. I just said that this was where China gets involved. Well, what happens is Vivendi is no longer the head of this. And Bobby Kotick creates this group called ASAC2. ASAC2 is like a group of investors.
Okay.
They made an LP. I don't know what LP. I have so many things in my brain right now I can't even think.
The LP's a record, man.
Yeah, they released this record. Now it's
they drop a
some
hot
sort of
mixtape?
company. Yes, they dropped a hot mixtape. It took over the world. So what happened was, according to Fool.com, Tencent was one of the several big investors that helped Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick repurchase the company's shares from Vivendi in 2013. Tencent still owns a 5% stake in Activision, which is worth about $2.5 billion after the stock's 400% rally. Blah 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 blah. That's not really important. It's not accurate. Okay. So this is from Engadget. They had said that Activision. Blizzard CEO stated in an early morning conference call that Tencent's participation in the buyback from Vivendi is merely a sign of the company's enthusiasm. What? So within this announcement of this giant buyback, it was noted that a group of investors led by CEO Bobby Kotick will own a 24.9% stake in the newly independent company.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money that's involved. Okay, Tencent, a Chinese company with extreme amount of cash and fingers and many, many video game pies, was listed in this group. This is written by Engadget, by the way, that whole section.
That's funny.
He said, as far as Tencent, I think their investment just confirms the enthusiasm we have in our partnership for Call of Duty in China. They do not have a board seat. They are a passive investor, and I think this was largely as a result for their enthusiasm for the work we're doing together.
Hey,
Hold up. What?
Call of Duty in China?
Yeah.
You know that Chris Evans, Captain America himself, was in a Chinese-only commercial for Call of Duty.
Interesting. Wow. Did not know that.
Yeah.
Captain America, huh?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to break down ASAC 2. Okay? So who are these group of investors? Because they're trying to say, I've seen articles that kind of talk both ways, where Tencent's really not involved. I've seen some that say Tencent is involved. I've seen some that say that China is a big part of it. I've seen some that basically try to say that China has nothing. They don't say anything about the company, right? Let's break down the investors. This is Robert A. Kotick and Brian Kelly are kind of running the show, so to speak. They put in $100 million of their own money towards buying out from Vivendi. It's not a whole lot of money in this whole situation, right? There were 3 other groups that were investors in this. We have Tencent, which is the obvious. We know this is China, right? They put in a large portion of money. Davis Advisors and Leonard Green and Associates. These are the 3 heads of this group. Well, I'm going to start with the ones, Leonard Green and Associates. They're not really a Chinese company. Okay. They don't really have a lot going on with China other than the Blackstone Group is investing large portions of money in them. And they have an office in Shanghai. I couldn't really find anything that really linked them to a Chinese-related investment. So I'm going to leave them out of this equation. The other 2 companies in here have major connections to China. Don't need to talk about Tencent because we all know that Tencent is straight up Chinese.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Davis Advisors, however, this is from an interview on advisorperspectives.com with Danton G. Joy of Davis Advisors, who is the portfolio manager for their Davis large cap global international portfolios. He said specifically, in China, for example, for the past 5+ years, we've been focusing on the consumer space rather than the entire market. We own e-commerce leaders such as Alibaba and JD.com, as well as travel leader Ctrip, and the leader in for-profit education in New Oriental Education. All these companies are the leaders in their field, have strong business models, and are benefiting from rising consumer spending. I got to back up a second. What the heck does that even mean? They say they own Alibaba. Sorry.
That's a huge company, man.
This is a massive company. Okay, to be able to own these companies, which are really, if you look into, let's go to the Alibaba connection first.
Okay.
Okay, do you know anything about Alibaba?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
It's a website where you can buy all kinds of cheap stuff.
absolutely, that's a great way to put it. So this is from a Forbes article talking about Alibaba in China. This is from the article, Chinese government has a huge stake in Alibaba. Since the early days, Alibaba has been supported by the Chinese government, which used Alibaba's Taobao and Tmall sites to do billions of dollars in transactions between various government agencies, which allowed Alibaba to post eye-popping revenues and growth in the early days. So one of those companies is doing work and running the transactions for the Chinese government, right? Through Alibaba. The Chinese government still conducts a lot of trade between its various agencies using Alibaba platforms so as to ensure the continued scorching rates that Alibaba has been able to post year in and year out. So a lot of this goes into what he thinks about the ownership structure, okay, with China's murky and archaic ownership structure laws, and the fact that the government of China or the Chinese Communist Party has huge control almost every single thing in the Chinese economy. Companies, even society, means that Alibaba is the golden child at the moment. So China puts Alibaba almost over every single company out there. Okay, and we talked about what Mark Kern had said earlier, right? That China gives people free land, offices, tons of money infused to companies they favor, right? So we have one of these companies that are part of Activision Blizzard, or that have invested in Activision Blizzard, that is straight up owning Alibaba, which does basically all the gears that run money throughout the Chinese government. Am I crazy, or does that sound like that's really a Chinese company? Like,
is Alibaba associated with AliExpress?
I believe so.
Okay, because you could order knockoff guitars from there. I've actually looked into this. You can get these. They'll have fake serial numbers. They'll have everything from the American version of the guitar, but obviously you can't put like the brand names on them. So what they'll do, the headstock of all these guitars that I looked at were black. Just solid black. I was like, okay, so I mean, it just looks like a knockoff guitar. No, they put the fake logos on them and cover them with shoe polish so that they can get through customs. And then once it gets to you, you wipe off the shoe polish, and there is the logo for said guitar company, which I shall not name.
Interesting.
And you now have a knockoff guitar.
So that actually goes into the last part of this article that I was going to read from. He states in almost every single line of its various businesses, Alibaba is by and large protected by the government from foreign competitors.
Oh, man.
I've been saying for almost a year that between the government-related intra-trade and the sale of fake goods that occur on Alibaba's various B2B, C2C, and B2C trading platforms, that there is not a whole lot of actual business occurring when looked at on a percentage of overall revenue basis. A large portion of Alibaba's revenues on its various auction sites continue to be various Chinese government entities doing business with other Chinese government entities.
Dun, dun, dun.
So we are looking, I'm going to kind of break it down to this. People are saying that Tencent is the one that's really the cause of this whole thing, right? They're
They
bowing
really-
to Tencent. It's not just them.
But they only have like what, a 5% stake in Blizzard?
Bingo. There's
Yeah.
not a huge. However, 2 out of the 3 major investors. The second one is Davis,
Yeah.
and they are directly intertwined with China. They actually do the transactions between governmental business in China. So who is really at this point, to me in my head, in my mind, is not just Tencent involved here. They're the easy target in this. The underlying target here is really Davis Associates. And I think that's incredibly disingenuous. I'm surprised nobody has started to catch this, because they're in charge of the biggest, like, Amazon-esque store in the world.
Investigative journalism.
And we're not
at its
even
finest.
journalists. Who has not seen this connection? So, all right. So that's really like, I went down this rabbit hole and I felt terrible today because I was running around like a crazy person because I noticed this connection. It is a little tricky to find because I was getting sent to articles from 2013 that didn't exist. And I had to find like, you know how you can get like things off the web that are archived?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to go to some things like that to even find them mentioning that, and like Davis and all this. So it's weird to me. So that's kind of where I'm going to end this. This is where I think a lot of this boils down to is the fact that you have 2 out of the 3 major investors of Blizzard Activision ran by China. That's really who's pulling the strings here. It's not a small little stake in the company. It's the majority owners. And people want to say that it's an American company. I don't think it is anymore.
Nope.
So, man, I just destroyed myself going through that. That was a lot.
Are you out of breath right now, man?
I'm out of breath.
You look like
right
you're about
now.
to fall over.
I do feel like I'm about to fall over. So, guys, we will have a regular show coming up in the future. That ended up being way longer than I expected. This is my thoughts on why I think the company Blizzard is just not the way they're not acting in everybody's interest in America. They're acting like the interest of China.
And I mean, and if you remember, as you could tell, in the 90s, they were the company that was most focused on computer gaming.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's why a lot of computer gamers feel betrayed right now.
And, you know,
from
I didn't go through the rest of the timeline. They have, you know, since they were bought, or they were their own company, which has a lot of Chinese funding, they started their first worldwide invitational in 2004. They became much more of a global company that's having to deal with all these globalist ties. So I don't have much more to say today. I think I'm going to stop right there before I need to put on another tinfoil hat and do more research. Thank y'all for listening, guys, and following us down this crazy trail that leads us to where I don't think a lot of people are looking.
No.
And hopefully, you know, maybe we'll hear Blizzard changes their stance on things, and I can start playing Diablo again. And that's what I'm. You know what I'm really afraid of is they're going to announce Diablo 4 soon, and they're going to take it away from mobile, and everybody's going to be happy and forget that this happened.
I don't know, man. We'll see. BlizzCon's going to be pretty interesting this year.
Oh, tell me what's going on. What do you think's going to happen at BlizzCon?
Well, dude, BlizzCon is not that far away, and they haven't really said too much. I mean, they need to do some crowd control, or BlizzCon's going to be very interesting. I mean, there's already going to be protests outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be all kinds of disruptions during the presentations. I mean, that's going to happen no matter what. But if they don't try and do some form of crowd control, some kind of, you know, trying to save face, BlizzCon is going to be very different. I think it's going to be a hostile environment.
Oh, I definitely think so too. And we'll have to definitely keep an eye open and see what they decide to do.
You know, I think you could buy a digital ticket to where you can view all of the presentations and show floors and things like that from the internet.
Oh.
I wonder how much that. No, I'm not giving him any
Your
money.
points probably go up in the Chinese social credit system when you do buy a ticket.
I'm not giving him any money for that.
Yeah.
I'll watch it on YouTube.
We'll find out on Twitter, I'm sure. All right, guys, that's all I got for the day. Thank y'all for listening to this very emotionally and voice draining episode of the Lamer Gamers podcast.
I'll make sure that Travis puts his tinfoil hat up.
All right, guys, I'm out.
All right, that's it, guys. Have a good one. Take it easy. Have fun.